Okay, I think we can get started. Hello and welcome everyone to the ILSAA Providing Travel Guidance to Afghans webinar. Thank you so much for joining us today. Next slide, please. So a couple housekeeping things before we get started today. This webinar is being recorded and will be available for future viewings on the ILSAA Peer Networking Hub. And we hope this experience will be interactive and your participation is strongly encouraged. Please use the raise hand feature or the chat if you have any questions or want to add anything to the conversation. And then participants are also encouraged to share thoughts and comments using the participant chat and pose questions in the Q&A pod throughout the webinar. Should you experience any technical issues during the webinar, please send a private message to Hannah Deek and we will do our best to assist you. And then at the end of the webinar, we will send out an evaluation link and the presentation slides. And a quick peek at the agenda for today. First, we're going to do some welcome and introductions, and then we will talk about Traveling 101, kind of general guidance, and then traveling within and outside of the United States. Then we'll talk about passports and forms required for travel before we jump into a couple of hypothetical common scenarios, and then we'll do some question and answer in closing. And presenting today, my name is Emily McCabe. I am pro bono counsel at the American Bar Association Commission on Immigration, and I'm joined today by the fabulous Sarah Gadiri, pro bono counsel at Chapman and Cutler.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here.
Okay, and Sarah, if you want to take it.
Sure. So just talk about Traveling 101, things to recommend to your clients. The best offense is a good defense. It's so important that your clients understand what's happening before they go. They have to understand information about the time limitations. Those are different for green card holders versus asylees versus folks who are still waiting for their green cards. And the most important thing, and this is something that I hammer with my clients a lot, is that there is never a guarantee that you're going to be allowed to re-enter. Sometimes it does happen that CBP will, for some reason, just decide that they're not going to let you in. You get pulled for secondary screening. It's so important to be careful as your clients go places, because things can even happen on accident. Sometimes you have somebody who unwittingly. Can everybody hear me? I just got a message that can't hear. Okay. If you have trouble hearing, please check your internal system settings. Thank you so much, everybody who's replying that you can hear me. What I was saying is it's really, really important to be vigilant. Sometimes accidents happen. Sometimes people are in Montana and they accidentally end up in Canada. Sometimes people are flying somewhere and unwittingly get diverted to other places. The best thing that you can do as an advocate is to make sure that your clients understand the risks of what they're doing, because a lot of times there's a lot of emotions going on, and we always want to make sure that people are getting good advice on the outset, so that you're not getting a call from somebody who is in a problematic situation. Next slide.
And so first we're going to talk about traveling within the United States. Individuals can freely travel within the United States. I highly encourage my clients to see the U.S. sites and always carry some form of identification just in case. And just as Sarah was mentioning, be cautious if traveling, if going somewhere near international borders or passing near one. There's, as Sarah said, there's been, I've heard a lot of reports from my clients of accidentally crossing the border or getting into a gray area, a gray zone. in, near the Canadian border, that sort of thing, or near the US-Mexico border as well. So just remind your clients, depending on where they are planning to go, that they need to just be vigilant in staying within the United States. And also be cautious if traveling via airport. Government issued ID, photo ID is required for the airport, and you're in DHS territory when you're in an airport. So just remind your clients that there's the risks involved in what kind of interactions can happen at the airport. And next slide, please. Traveling to a country other than Afghanistan. So right here, we separated out between asylees and SIVs. So asylees, they must obtain a refugee travel document to travel abroad. Do not use the passport. Do not tell your clients or remind your clients, even if you've mentioned it before, even if you've mentioned it many times. There's never too many times to remind your clients, please don't use your passport. Best case, there's no issue, but worst case, you've made room for reavailment arguments for the government, and nobody wants that. So just don't use your Afghan passport. And for asylees, when they fill out the refugee travel document, which Sarah will talk about momentarily, there are spots for where they can explain where they want to go. But just confirm for the finalized itinerary for your client that they know the requirements for entry to the countries that they want to go to. Many countries accept the refugee travel document, but not every country accepts the refugee travel document. So that's just something that they should know before they go.
And also those requirements change. Sometimes countries used to accept them. Sometimes now they don't. So it's really important that they're in touch with the folks in the embassy or a consulate that is designated for that country, so that they can make sure. There's a lot of people asking questions about a list of countries. There is not a list that I've been able to find that is like an official list of every country that accepts those. And so it's really important to do like case by case analysis. There are countries that folks would want to go to. So for example, if your client wants to go to Iran, that's going to be a problem on a refugee travel document. For folks who are SIVs who go to Iran on an Afghan passport, they've been able to get in. But that's just like an additional security flag that would come up if somebody's trying to go by airplane to Iran. So that's the most common one that has come up. European countries, most of them are pretty accepting of the refugee travel document. And so there is the people who accept the refugee travel document with a visa, or people who accept a refugee travel document without a visa. So that's those two things are different. So it is really, really important, again, to check with the embassy or consulate before somebody is planning to go on a trip to a third country. So sometimes the embassy's websites do say it, sometimes they don't. Sometimes you have to call. And so I would recommend that your client, or you, if you decide that that's part of the scope of your representation, go and contact some embassy official to ask the question ahead of time. Yes, SIV is free to travel on an Afghan passport. Emily's going to get to that. So I'll let Emily explain that quickly. I'm trying to keep an eye on what's going on here in the chat too.
Sorry. For SIVs, for special immigrants, they are free to travel on their Afghan passport. And I also just want to note, someone in the chat brought up a great point to make sure that the particular airline accepts the refugee travel document. I'm sure most airlines will say that they accept the refugee travel document, but like any customer service a potential issue, absolutely be prepared to explain to your client that they might need to explain what a refugee travel document is to the customer service representative in case they run into problems. And again, just being fully prepared for a worst case scenario, and so that your client is not denied at the airport or goes all this way just to not be able to get on the plane.
And I see a question about the Ottawa issued stamp renewal passports. If you're an asylee, that person should not be traveling on with that passport, regardless of whether it's original and it has not expired or if it was extended. For an SAV, if you have an extension passport, you can use that. We haven't seen people have too much trouble coming back in with those and a green card. So, but again, it's something that you always need to, warn your clients about. With respect to folks dealing with customer service and whatever, most of the time the supervisors are familiar with it. Just like plan extra time if they're going to the airport. That's the most important. And yes, it applies to derivatives as well as principals.
And there was a quick question on explaining why SAVs are able to travel on Afghan passports. SAVs don't need to worry about the reavailment issue that asylees need to worry about. It's a different part of the Immigration and Nationality Act for the status and then for adjustment. So the SIVs are able to use their Afghan passport, and we will talk more about one important related note in the next slide. And traveling back to Afghanistan. So the note that I was talking about, while SIVs can use their Afghan passports, even though they can return to Afghanistan, also because, again, they don't need to worry about reavailment concerns, we have heard many stories of significant safety concerns for folks returning to Afghanistan who have SIV. And also, this all applies if the only thing that if there's no asylum application. So if you have a client who has both asylum or asylum pending and SIV, that would put your client in a unique position and a complicated position, which is going to require more analysis on and depend exactly on what your client's goals are. But so I'm specifically talking about people who only have SIV. So I just want to clarify that.
If you have asylum and you have a green card, you still should not be traveling with your Afghan passport. I want to be very, very clear about that. If you have an SIV and you have an SIV-based green card, you are okay to use an Afghan passport.
And asylees should never return to their country of persecution, which for most of our clients will be Afghanistan. And just as Sarah just said, don't travel to the country and don't use the country's passport for asylees. And for tips, this is, of course, we understand, Sarah and I have both experienced, it's very difficult to have these conversations with clients. They haven't seen their family in years. And so trying to encourage your clients to travel to other locations other than Afghanistan, it can be really challenging. And so just kind of, it's important to acknowledge that it's a difficult situation that they're in. And, even though they've done XYZ, even though they've done everything right here, they still have to abide by not going back to Afghanistan, or really considering the safety concerns if they're able to go back to Afghanistan. So if your clients are revisiting this topic again and again, just know that it's difficult, and let your clients know that you understand that, and maybe using some trauma-informed lawyering will help, and encouraging them to see the sites in maybe Europe, or traveling within the United States if they have other family members who, even though you won't be able to see the family member you hope to see in Afghanistan anytime soon, maybe things will change and you can meet in a third country later, and maybe you can meet with some of your friends or other family members who are in the United States. So just trying to encourage folks without being too much of a Debbie Downer of when you provide the information.
And just one more tip about SIVs. If you don't have your green card yet, we don't recommend people travel. There are always risks in doing that. The best advice that you can give a client who wants to go back and is waiting on a green card is to try to hold their horses if they possibly can. All right. Next slide.
Okay. Passports. We've touched on this a few times, but just to reiterate, to make it crystal clear, asylees should never use or renew their country of persecution's passport. Again, it makes room for reavailment arguments, which nobody wants. And they should keep it. They shouldn't destroy it if they have it, because they will need it eventually. They'll need copies of it. If it gets destroyed, that's one thing, but they don't need to go out and, burn it in the backyard, but definitely don't use it. Never use it. And again, don't return to Afghanistan. Meanwhile, special immigrants, SIVs, they can use their Afghan passport for international travel, for travel within the U.S. as a government-issued ID, for any photo ID that they might need to show at the airport, that sort of thing.
Next slide. All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about the travel document itself. So I have a picture of one. You can see it if you haven't seen one. That's what they look like. They look like a regular U.S. passport, except they're green, and they say travel document instead of passport. Refugee travel document is for asylees. The form that's required is a form I-131, which is the worst form because it's very confusing. But that is the form that is used. You can file it with the green card application, or you can do it separately. If you paid a fee for a green card application, there is no additional fee for a 131. But if you file it separately, there is a fee. The worst part of these is that they take forever and they're only valid for 1 year. And so it's really frustrating. There has been some advocacy around trying to push that travel documents be valid for 5 years or 2, or something like that. But so far, those that advocacy hasn't really gone anywhere, and right now the validity is still 1 year. Again, what we talked about, it's not accepted everywhere. You can try to expedite them. Most of mine have been denied, but there is always a chance that it could work, especially if there is like an urgent humanitarian issue. These are not renewable in the way that like U.S. passports are. You have to redo everything from the beginning. And so it's a very time-consuming process, and you have to pay the fee again. And so it's a little bit frustrating. If you do not have your green card yet and you're an SIV applicant, then you can get advanced parole to leave. I don't like recommending this because it is still risky. Getting advanced parole does not guarantee that you're going to be let back into the United States. So technically it's possible, but I really try to tell my clients that it's not a safe choice. And the best thing to do is to wait until their adjustment has been finalized and they have their green cards before traveling. So that is... Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, that is old. I apologize. The fee is in there, the 135. It is not, it's not waived anymore. That's my mistake. I'm sorry. It can be still filed concurrently with the 485 or separately, but that is correct about the fee. Yes, I should have made it clear. If you filed for an adjustment before 401 and then you're later filing a 131, it is still free. But if you adjust after and you file with the 131 concurrently, then it's not free anymore. All right, go into our common scenarios here. Emily?
Yes. Next slide, please.
All right, so this one is mine, right? Okay, so we're going to go into some common scenarios here, just some hypotheticals. Y'all can read this, but this is a question about Muhammad. He has children in the United States, but his wife Zahra is still in Afghanistan. and he has a 730 for her, but it's still pending. It hasn't been granted yet, and Muhammad wants to see his wife as soon as possible. So let's talk a little bit about what advice we would give him and what would we recommend, right? So what are some options for them? So Muhammad has won his asylum case. So he is eligible for a travel document. That's right. And so he can leave, but he has his two little kids with him too. So if one of the considerations is there someone safe that he can leave his children with here, or does he want to take his children with him? Because the 730 is pending for her, she doesn't have any ability to try to come here yet. But he could apply for a refugee travel document for himself or for him and his two kids if he wants to try to take them along. Obviously, that's a time-consuming process, like we mentioned. And then the question would also be, can Zahra leave? So she in Afghanistan, she has a 730. We're assuming that we could assume that her attorney advised that before filing a 730, she should try to get a passport, an Afghan passport. So if she has a valid Afghan passport and can get out, she could try to meet them in another country. I think Turkey is a good suggestion. He could also try for humanitarian parole. Those are not working very well unless somebody's already in a third country. So it's an option. But when we talk about other questions we would want to ask, we need to, like I said, ask Zahra, does she have a passport? Does she have the means to get out? All that type of stuff are all relevant considerations for what we would advise them to do. The unfortunate part of this situation is that a lot of people are stuck here either with some of their children and not all of them, or stuck here without their wives or husbands. There are internal considerations about traveling as a single Afghan woman safely. Does she have a qayyam, a guardian, a wakil, somebody who has the ability to help her get out of the country? I think those are all going to be relevant considerations as we try to figure out, what's going to work. It's not clear if the considerations for her are going to make it difficult for her to be able to exit the country safely or not. There's another question about whether or not she would want to try to attempt a visa-less entry. Obviously, we can never counsel our clients to do anything that's against the law, but borders are porous. There are some significant risks that she would have to undertake if she went to do something like that. So the best case scenario here is that she could try to get to another country and see them there. But it is absolutely not safe for Muhammad to go back to Afghanistan. He's not going to be able to go there to see his wife or to bring his wife if he is an asylee. Emily, anything I missed you wanted to chime in on? All right. Next slide.
Thank you. Okay, so common scenario number 2. Layla recently received her green card through SIV. Layla's child is still in Afghanistan. In the last 2 years, Layla's child has developed serious medical conditions. The consular process is proceeding, but Layla is anxious to see her child as soon as possible. So, what options and considerations would you provide to Layla if she was your client? And then what additional questions would you want to ask Layla? Expedite humanitarian parole. That's great. The expedite humanitarian parole, absolutely worth a try. As Sarah was saying, we haven't heard of much success in that for folks who are still in Afghanistan, but perhaps the child goes out of country to receive some medical treatments. That's not uncommon. So if that's possible to coordinate there, absolutely something to look into. And yes, does Layla have a passport? Fantastic question. And the another thing is that Layla, because she's a green card holder, through SIV, she could travel, assuming she has a passport. But as we mentioned earlier, if she were my client, I would strongly encourage her not to travel to Afghanistan because we've heard it's very unsafe for folks to return, especially it could be very much related to why she got her SIV here in the first place, and also as a woman traveling seemingly by herself, as we did not mention any partners. So if possible, meet in a safe third country. We didn't say where the child is, so maybe the child, best case, is near a border, and it would be a little bit easier than if geographically it would be complicated, in addition to having to deal with the child's medical conditions. Yes, great point. We would definitely want to counsel Layla that do not make this trip longer than 6 months. I think it would also, as we were talking about before, having difficult conversations with clients, that would absolutely be something that would be very difficult to talk about, but you're going to have to talk about with your client I understand it's been a long time since you've seen your daughter and you're going to want to be with your daughter. But if you're outside of the United States for longer than 6 months in a given year, it will absolutely affect your green card. So giving the clients the information, is our job. So even though it's difficult to hear, it's very important to know, for them to know what the parameters are. Screen for inadmissibility. Yep. The expedite request for humanitarian parole, and I think it would be worth trying with for the wherever she is in the consular process as well. Again, worth a try if you're already gathering the medical evidence. And there is evidence, if you're going to translate it once, might as well make a copy of it, and try to get an expedite wherever and whenever you can, especially in a case like this with serious medical conditions being one of, or emergency medical conditions being one of the expedite criteria according to USCIS. So I would absolutely give that a go as well.
I just want to touch on one of the questions that's in the chat about being unsafe to return if you're an SAV holder. We always counsel people that there are certain risks because there are many people who have SAVs because they work for the U.S. government, and there are still reports of people being disappeared or hurt that we believe that it is unsafe. Now, everybody has to make their own decision, right? If I tell somebody there's a risk that you'll die, well, they might say, well, there's a risk that I'll die every day, right? And maybe the benefits outweigh the risks. But my counsel to people is always, if there are people who are trying to get out of that country because they believe it's unsafe for the reasons that you believed it was unsafe for you to be able to go back, then I think that is one of the pieces of evidence or pieces of information that I always give my clients. There's a very good point in here that I want to make also, is that if Layla has her green card through the SIV, and she's working through the process of bringing her daughter, I hope that the consular process that this is talking about is an I-130 and not some other kind of process. So that is a very good point, that if somebody has a 130 and we could expedite the underlying petition rather than additionally applying for humanitarian parole, probably a better option. Anything else, Emily, that we're forgetting here? Okay. We can go to the next slide. All right, so we've done a lot of Q&A. We tried to leave as much time as we could possible for these. The one thing I did want to touch on before we jump into Q&A is TPS. The majority of Afghans now are mostly in the either asylum granted, asylum pending something status, or in the SAV process where they either have their green card or they're waiting for it. There are a small number of people who applied for TPS as a backstop for whom their asylum application was not granted. So want to talk a little bit about the I-512T. There is an option to get permission to leave as somebody who has TPS. There are questions about, coming back in and whether you're admitted, like how that works for the admission for people who have TPS. Obviously, those of you who are following along with like current TPS stuff know that that being readmitted into TPS is not the same problem that it used to be. And for this population, it's a very, very small number of people who are going to be affected. But if you have a client that was not granted asylum and is on TPS or is in some kind of limbo situation where they have TPS, but they haven't gotten something else yet, it's worth having a chat through that possibility with your client as well. Again, always a little bit of a balancing act in terms of weighing the risk of not being allowed back in. But that is something else we wanted to just briefly touch on before we open it up to more questions. Okay. Emily, are you ready? Is there any parting thoughts before we move into Q&A?
No.
Okay. We've been doing our best to keep along with the chat as it's been going, but there's a ton of stuff in there. And so if your question hasn't been asked yet, please go ahead and put the questions you have in the chat. Okay. We're going to do, I do not know about trainings on humanitarian parole. There are many trainings on humanitarian parole that have been done in the past. I don't know if there's any prospective ones. Let's see. Here's again, passports. If you have a pending 485, do you need both advanced parole and a refugee travel document? Yes. You just need the travel document and you need advanced parole if you don't have a green card yet.
One question I see is whether the I-131, the refugee travel document, is fee waiver eligible, and the answer is no. Unfortunately,
they're coming in way too fast. Bear with us here. We're trying to read through them. Most prefer to go to Pakistan. It is not safe to go to Iran. For many folks, Pakistan is not doing visa on arrival. I don't have any up-to-date information on whether or not Pakistan accepts travel documents. It's not come up for me. The travel documents countries that have come up for me are Turkey and Emirates. So I unfortunately don't have more information on that one. Sorry, go ahead.
If the client wants to travel to a third country to visit a family member as soon as possible but does not have specific travel plans, what should they put as the intended date of departure on the I-1?
I usually just put ASAP. I don't think they actually pay attention to those dates. So you can put whatever you want. The likelihood is if you're asking for it in the next less than 16 months, that probably is not going to happen unless you have a reason to expedite. But it really doesn't matter. In terms of protective advice to clients, usually what I tell people is once you naturalize, if you want to go back to your home country, then you can. You have the protection of the United States government that way as a citizen. But I try to counsel people that it really is not safe. And it is a big risk. Now, everybody is comfortable with different risk setups, right? But I always tell people worst case scenario, because I don't want there to ever be an issue with me saying, oh, well, you could do it and then something bad happens, right? So those are the rules. Everybody has to make their own risk assessment. But my recommendation to people is it's not safe. I don't recommend that you do it. If you want to do it, we can talk through the risks. But I always start from I don't think it's a good idea situation, and that's my personal style. You are an attorney. If you're an attorney or an advocate, and you want to give different advice, obviously that's your choice. But I do think that it's very important, especially for many of these clients who have not had the opportunity to get education or maybe don't know as much about things, is to get things on as simple and plain terms as possible. And if people want to ask questions or you have a more sophisticated client, you should definitely counsel your client in the way that you think is best. And I think there's a very good point here about the difference between SIV and asylees. I think, as I was mentioning, there's a ton of misinformation that goes around in WhatsApp or Telegram channels in the Afghan community. And someone will be like, well, I know somebody who did XYZ. Why can't I do that? And I think it's a really important thing to do to keep in front of your client and be educating them about not taking advice just because somebody else did something. Okay, we have 3 hands up. I know I didn't notice who had anybody's hand up. We'll go for Sayed Alawi. You want to answer your question? You want to mention your question? I should also say, if you have questions about a specific situation or your own situation, we're not types of questions here. So if you want to posit, like I am XYZ and I need immigration advice, we're not doing that here today. So if somebody doesn't have a question about their own personal specific situation, you can take that question. So Sayed Alawi.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. Do you have a general question?
Yeah, thank you very much, and thanks for your presentation. So, I just have a question. I came to the US in 2022, but can I bring my parents?
I can't. We're not going to give advice about specific cases. It's not appropriate. I don't have all the information. I haven't reviewed your file. I can't answer that question. I'm really sorry. We're going to give general information. I can't opine on particular cases. I'm going to go from the top. Heshmatullah.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes. So you have a general question?
It's a general question.
Yeah.
So if someone had applied for asylum and their asylum has been approved,
mm-hmm.
but later on they receive their SIV approval as well,
mm-hmm.
and they apply for green card based on the SIV and received their green card on SIV category, are they able to travel to Afghanistan with the Afghanistan passport? Or since they have testimony or their asylum has been approved, it might have negative effect on their case?
Emily, do you have thoughts on that one? My inclination is that if everything is proceeding on the SIV, and that happened before you were able to withdraw the asylum application, I don't know that it would be an issue, but I don't know. I can't opine on that. I don't know the answer. If they had withdrawn their asylum application, I'd feel a lot more comfortable with it. Okay. See, I saw some yes. There's so many people with their hands up. Let's see here. Abdul Zarbi. Okay.
So much.
Yes, sorry, go ahead.
I have a general question. My client from Afghanistan, they're having SIV status.
Uh-huh.
They came in the US 2022, and the whole family received their green card. Before coming to the US, the family stayed for a couple of months in Pakistan, and one of the kids burned in Pakistan. And they're asking what document is required for us if we want to travel back to Afghanistan. They're asking if we get a passport from Afghanistan. That could be a question for us later on, that they may ask us questions. How did you get this passport?
If they're SIVs, they can use Afghan passports. There's no problem with using an Afghan passport if you have a SIV green card. Is that
the question is, the whole family have passport. One of the kids doesn't have passport.
Yeah. Then you want to apply for an Afghan passport for the baby.
If they didn't get the passports from Afghanistan, if they're not able to get passports from Afghanistan, what should they do?
If they're unable to get passports, I think this is a little bit too specific of a question, and I don't feel comfortable opining on it. Emily?
Same. Yeah, I don't think
that's... So sorry. Yeah, this is... I'm not able to give information about that. I don't think that's appropriate for this venue. I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
let's see. Sayed Yahya Hosseini.
Oh, hey, hello.
Yes,
Good
right.
afternoon.
Yes.
First of all, I want to thank you for this great webinar and with this great information you are sharing with us. I'm really thankful for that one. And my question is, my family, they are living in Iran.
Okay, I'm going to stop you. We can't answer specific questions about people's specific cases.
No, it's not. I'm only asking about their passport got expired. Can I extend their passport here in the Ottawa? There is no effect on my case.
What kind of case do you have? An SIV or an asylum case?
Aside the approval.
You want to renew your passport or your family's passport?
Only my family, because I heard in the already that I shouldn't extend or use my passport. So there is no reason I extend my own passport. I only want to
Are your family members part of your asylum application? Is it?
Yes, they are.
Your derivatives?
Yes, I added their name in my family names. So should I extend their passport in sending their passport to Canada, or should I only?
If there are derivatives on your asylum application, I would not do that.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yep.
And I just want to jump in. Generally, there was a great point brought up in the chat about how a lot of this, what we're talking about today, is very dependent clearly on your client's individual situation. And also, if there's a change in administration, a lot of these things could change. So just making sure that we're all on the same page, that this is the information we have today. And also that the information that we're providing today, Sarah and I are both talking about what we would tell our own clients. So, of course, reasonable minds may disagree on certain strategies. So just bear in mind that that's, again, it's from it's information through our lenses.
Okay. And folks are answering each other's questions, which is something I love about this community. We're doing our best to try to get to everybody that we can, but appreciate everybody who's in the chat answering other people's questions for us. We really appreciate that. Okay. Let's see. Potavi Vanadilok.
Hi, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I just want to clarify, if I have a client who has an approved asylum and she eventually gets approved for her green card and it's not advisable for Afghanis to renew their Afghan passports. Yes. So if she gets approved for her green card, can she then still apply and travel on a refugee travel document? Is that what's possible?
Yes. And I would just apply for the refugee travel document at the same time or as soon as possible because it takes forever.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem. Sababdin Markosh.
Hi dear, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so my question is about my clients that they try to unify with their family in their I-70 or process, but most of them do not want to go to Pakistan because the situation is not ideal, that not receiving enough support in Pakistan to stuff that they're doing the scrutiny or security stuff in front of the embassies. So what's the ideal country to recommend to them that they can go to that country and process their I-70 visa there? Because
there's a lot of disagreement about where to send people, and there are other avenues where people know more about that than we do here. I think everybody's a little bit different. Some people are more comfortable going different places. And so there's not one country that I can recommend like everybody go to. I don't know, Emily, if you have any suggestions, but there's not something that as soon as I say on this call, everybody should go to X place, then that place is going to get overwhelmed too. So I don't know that I have a good suggestion there. Emily?
Same. And my understanding that it also keeps changing of people have success here. And then the next anecdote is it was much more difficult than the person previously. So I think, I wouldn't want to give you outdated information.
Okay. Fatima Sayyidi.
Hi, hello everyone. Thank you so much. The people that a family that's come through the parole status in the United States and they apply for asylum, and then they're approved for asylum, they apply for a green card. Most of the clients are in this situation. So after getting their green card, not the case holder, but the spouse or the kids, they still cannot travel to Afghanistan.
So yeah, we recommend that anybody who's a derivative or a principal on an asylum case not go back, right? Can you, like, physically is a different question than is it recommended. And my recommendation to my clients is it is not a good idea.
Oh, okay. And also, I have another question from you. So, are you able to provide any sort of help with the family reunification process that is
That's beyond the scope. Yeah, that's unfortunately beyond the scope of this particular webinar.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay. Richard Link.
My question is about Afghans who are in the United States and are not eligible for a refugee travel document because they were never asylees or refugees, but they also don't have an Afghani passport. Are those people stuck in the U.S.? I know they could renew their passports, but if they've never had one, is there any option for them?
So these are people who are SIV green card holders?
Yeah, they could be, yeah.
So SIV green card holders don't have the same risks on getting an Afghan passport or traveling on an Afghan passport than asylee green card holders do. So the practical aspect of it is that I am not aware of anybody who's issuing new Afghan passports in North America at all. The only thing I'm aware of is in Ottawa, the extension stamps. Somebody might have better information than I do, but I have not heard of an option to get an Afghan passport for a new Afghan passport for somebody outside of Afghanistan. I have seen a lot of news articles talking about people getting fraudulent Afghan passports or having issues with that. So I think that's a real consideration. But the embassies in Canada are not issuing new passports as far as I know. So I do not believe there's any way to get a new Afghan passport in North America.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's see. Sultana Rahim Barakzai.
Thank you so much for taking my question. So do you have any advice for someone who would like to go back to the country? They're a combat veteran, they're having some mental health issues, and if they're trying to board, they're unable to due to pending citations they have. Any advice for someone in that situation?
Citations meaning like criminal citations?
Yes.
Yeah, that's tricky. Criminal history stuff is a very fraught. It really should be you should really be talking to somebody who specializes in crimmigration. That's not my expertise. I can't unfortunately give any advice on that. I know, Emily, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I would be I think as nervous as you are, the person who asked the question. And yeah, I would I agree with Sarah. I would look for resources and people who have expertise in crimmigration, because yeah, that would be very nerve-wracking for sure. Sorry, I don't have an answer for you.
Christine Hoffman?
Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry. I think you probably already addressed this issue, but I didn't understand it all the way. So if a client that has a pending I-485 and wants to travel, they still need to apply for travel permit and advance parole, right? They have to do both.
So they're an asylee with a pending 485?
Yes.
Yeah, then you need a travel document for sure. And I'm sorry, this part was do you need
advanced parole and the travel permit?
No, you don't need. I don't think you need advanced parole. But Emily, can you tell me? I think
my understanding is that they don't need it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you just need a refugee travel document.
Just the travel document if the I-45 is pending.
Yeah, but there are risks in doing that. So just make sure you advise your client. What's technically required versus what's a good idea are two very different things.
Right. And then if they haven't filed for the I-45, let's say they enter as refugee, or if they were granted asylum, they haven't filed for I-45, can they still apply for the travel permit without the advance parole, or they need the advance parole?
So if you don't have a pending 485, and you have a travel document, or we don't have a travel document yet.
We don't have it yet. I'm just saying, if they want to travel before the I-45 is filed,
I would not recommend anybody do that.
Okay.
I would strongly advise against that.
File the travel permit application with the I-485 at the same time instead of requesting.
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason to not. If somebody is eligible, I guess obviously what I'm recommending to folks is wait 8 months after your asylum grant before you apply for adjustment. There have been some situations where people's adjustment got granted too fast, and then they're going to have problems when they want to naturalize. Mm-hmm. So I would advise to wait the time. Again, I know that a lot of this advice is hard to give, but that's what I tell my clients is your best situation, unless it's like life or death, and even sometimes in life or death situations, to stay here and not risk.
Mm-hmm.
That's my advice.
Okay, thank you.
Samara Spiller, sorry if I'm saying.
There. No worries. Thanks for your time.
Yeah.
Just generally, as far as the male guardian goes for traveling out of Afghanistan, is there a minimum age requirement for the guardian, or how does somebody qualify for that?
So I'm not aware of like any specific, like that they're checking IDs for somebody of a particular age. I don't know what's happening on the ground right now for people who are actually trying to leave Afghanistan without a husband or anything like that. If somebody else has more experience on that, I've seen some people in the chat who know way more about on the ground Afghanistan situations than I do. Feel free to chime in, but I don't know the answer to that question.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anna Taddeo.
Hi, thank you so much for your time today. I just wanted to confirm, are you including a biometric fee with these applications? So if it was a refugee travel document for an adult and it's $165, are you also paying $85 for the biometric? And so then submitting like $250 total money order or authorization of credit card?
Yeah, I always use the fee calculator on USCIS's website.
Okay.
You go on
they change their fees all the time.
I know they do. And that's why I'm saying the best thing to do is to go on their website and use the fee calculator, because that will give you the most up-to-date information.
But I just my question is that you do include a biometric fee.
I haven't done one in a minute. So since the fees changed, I have not submitted a biometrics fee. But you should definitely check the USCIS website. That's the best place to get information. I don't want to opine on what USCIS fees are, because they could change them 5 minutes from now and I wouldn't know. So please use the fee calculator. It's the best way to do it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mariam Rahmani.
Hi, thank you. I appreciate to take me time. Just I apply asylum. And after that, apply I-730 for my husband. My husband is in Afghanistan.
I've got to stop you. I can't give specific advice about people's cases here. I really apologize.
No, it's just because I-730 accept to which one is the better one, asylum or 730 sponsorship.
I'm not answering specific questions about specific cases. I don't know enough information about everything, and so I can't answer that question. I'm very sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. expert, Miss Nasiri, who is way better at this than I am and should be giving this presentation.
You're so kind. So thank you so much for this wonderful event. My question was already answered. It was about, there's so many people seeking to get a passport, and they're going there. There's misinformation saying they're going to Canada to get a new passport. And thank you for answering that question. I think this presentation is really informative for the community because there's a lot of misunderstanding between asylees traveling and SIV. So the answer to the question was, you said that they could only renew it in Canada, but cannot get a new passport at this time.
Exactly right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Zaina Noor.
So I think someone asked before about how SIV people who are SIV, how do they get a passport if they're in North America? Now I've heard that some people have been doing applying for an advanced parole document for people who have an already approved green card who's the basis on SIV, and using that as a travel document. Is that something that you've come across before? Because ordinarily, if your green card was pending and you wanted to travel as an SIV, you would get the advanced parole, apply for advanced parole. But have you heard of it happening after the fact?
I've never seen somebody use just advanced parole or anything, only that without a passport to come in and out of the country. I've never seen that. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen, but I've never seen it. I don't know, Emily, if you have.
I haven't either.
Fatima Alizadeh. Okay. Did I get everybody? That had their hand up? Okay.
Hi, I have two questions. Actually, I heard about the passport for the asylee. So I have a client, she has an Afghani passport and she got her asylum approval. So would you recommend her to change her passport and use her passport when she get her green card later on?
So she's an asylee?
Yes.
No, do not travel with an Afghan passport.
Okay. And another question is, I have a client, he granted her asylum and then later, 2 months later, he applied for the travel document. And I don't know, and he's waiting for the travel document. Can he use the travel document with the asylum approval to go to another country?
As long as it's not Afghanistan and it's a country that accepts the travel document, you can use a travel document to go to another country. The travel document is kind of like a passport that way.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. All right, we are unfortunately out of time. We are at the hour mark. I'm sorry that we didn't get to everybody's questions. Thank you for being patient with us. As Emily mentioned, this is a fluid situation. Things change all the time. Guidance is changing all the time. We're doing our best to give you the information that we have at this moment. But always check USCIS guidelines. Always check the relevant websites for consulates. If you're traveling, the best advice that we can do is to give you this information to have in your mind as you're trying to advise your clients on the best thing for them to do. So again, thank you all so much for everything. Tashakkur for those of you who are joining and who are Daddy speakers. Thank you for being here. There will be more ILSAA webinars. Stay tuned. If you could fill out the survey, we really appreciate it. Just drop the link in the chat. So please let us know if you thought that we gave good and helpful information. If you think there are things that we can do better, we always really appreciate that. The presentation will be available for everybody to take a look at. Emily, do you have any parting words?
No, thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you, Emily. And thanks to the team at ILSAA for putting this together. A special shout out to Hannah for making this all possible and orchestrating everything behind the scenes. So thank you all for being here. Please fill out the survey, and we look forward to seeing you at further ILSAA events.